Welcome to Type C Tech Reviews. Today we're going to be reviewing the Alienware AW2725QF. But if at any point during the video and I got this exact same monitor, there's Dell.com links below, but let's get into it. Firstly, this is a 27-inch screen size with two different resolutions, either 3840 by 2160 at 180 Hz or 1920 by 1080 at 360 Hz. Now this is the dual resolution as Dell calls it, but it's more commonly known as resolution halving. The concept is that a 4K resolution has exactly double the number of horizontal lines of pixels than a full HD or 1080p screen, right? So 2160 divided by 2 is 1080. Now for this 4K monitor to refresh at its 180 Hz, it must refresh twice the number of horizontal lines of pixels or double the speed when compared to a 1080p monitor with that same 180 Hz refresh rate. So what this monitor does is when switching to the 1080p mode, it essentially locks the two horizontal lines of pixels together, making it 1080 doubled pixel lines, which again fills up that full 2160 lines, horizontal lines that the native 4K panel has. However, because the monitor is able to create each of its 2160 scan lines, or horizontal lines of pixels, at twice the rate, when the monitor decreases to 1080p, it locks two lines of pixels and the additional 2 pixels to the right to create essentially one large single pixel out of 4. Then it completes the full screen of scan lines in half the time as the 4K resolution, then allowing for the refresh rate to, well, double, because it's going double the speed now. Thus, we have 360 Hz at 1920 by 1080 and 4K at 180 Hz. It's very, very cool tech. Now, for the panel type here, this is an IPS panel still, and so far this is the least expensive gaming monitor using resolution halving technology, so that's pretty exciting. I think we'll see this a lot more commonly. Now, the matte finish on this panel is pretty average, gives a slight dirty screen effect on pure white, though this is partially more noticeable due to how bright the monitor gets. However, in-game, you really never notice it. What is noticeable, though, is the way that 1080p looks. Obviously, this is not native 1080p, it's natively a 4K panel. So 1080p on this monitor looks cleaner in some ways, especially if you're sitting close. On solid colored icons and areas, you don't see horizontal and vertical pixel lines like you do on a normal 1080p 27-inch panel. In this way, 1080p looks a lot better here actually. But text and small icons here do appear more pixelated than on a traditional 27-inch native 1080p monitor. When looking at small text back to back in a native 1080p and this monitor at 1080p, there is a significant difference. Text is much easier to read on a native 1080p monitor. However, that doesn't matter because you have 4K if you're gonna be writing text, so how does it look in game? Well, it does actually look different. On the one hand, solid colors and such look way better, but clearly defined edges do look a little bit fuzzier almost. Because of this combination, it almost gives a slight cartoony effect to games. It shouldn't be a deal breaker though, as it is slight, and in a lot of ways it looks better, so it kind of, I guess, evens itself out, but definitely something to note and interesting. As for the ports, on the back of the monitor, there are two HDMI 2.1s, with one of those being an eARC port that is Dolby Atmos compatible. Obviously, Dolby is now a partner, I think, with Dell and Alienware. One DisplayPort 1.4, one USB Type-B upstream, and then two USB Type-A downstream ports. Then underneath the chin, in a kind of easily accessible area, you guys know I love this, it says one USB Type-A and a USB Type-C for charging or plugging in your mouse, keyboard, whatever you want to do. For variable refresh rate, this is NVIDIA certified G-Sync compatible, and we had no problems during testing. For console compatibility, this is fully compatible with the PS5, Xbox Series X, and S at 4K, 120, variable refresh rate, HDR, and this has a console mode, a dedicated console mode, which is really nice, and that will automatically turn on ALLM or auto low latency mode. So yeah, if you want to use this with a console as well as a PC, go for it, but obviously there's no reason to get this strictly for a console because 360 Hz, yeah. But if you want to use this in the 4K mode with a console, it works great. But now let's talk brightness. Brightness in SDR here is fantastic, way outperforming its rating of 400 nits, hitting over 500 nits of brightness. HDR brightness is also great here, hitting around 550 nits of full screen brightness. And again, full screen brightness, that's not strictly the tiny little highlights, full screen brightness. It's more common in IPS panels, but I've been reviewing a lot of OLEDs, so I feel like I have to say that. Now again, that's just in standard HDR. For Dolby Vision, brightness is slightly higher here, hitting 580 nits. Now this does actually have local dimming, but it's not full array local dimming, and it's only on when you're in standard HDR. It does not come on when you're in SDR, and it does not come on when you're in Dolby Vision. There's also no way that I've found to turn it on or off. The local dimming here consists of some edge-lit vertical zones, and realistically, especially in-game, they do pretty much nothing ever, unless you're just going to go to a black loading screen, and even then, I mean, what's the real benefit there? However, one extremely nice thing that this monitor has in HDR is the custom color mode, which allows you to fine-tune saturation, hue, and contrast. That is something that very few monitors have, but it is so nice that Alienware is now including that on, I think, a lot of their monitors now, if not all of them, which is awesome. All right, now before we move on to colors, to finish off HDR, one note here is that while you're using the 1080p 360Hz mode, Dolby Vision had significantly lower brightness in the low 330 nit range, which is much lower than in 4K 180. However, the standard HDR and SDR had no change basically at all in brightness. But with that, let's move on to colors. They are awesome here, covering 95% of the DCI P3 color gamut, and you can output 10 bits of color both at 4K 180 and 1080p 360. Accuracy out of the box is also very good, as this comes factory calibrated with the full calibration report actually on the monitor itself inside the menu system. Colors honestly look great on this panel, especially because of the sheer brightness. The vibrancy because of that brightness is phenomenal. Mix that with the wide color gamut. Yeah, it's very pretty, and that's saying something because I daily Acuity OLED. So yeah, you're not gonna be disappointed with the colors here. As for contrast ratio, this is 1000 to 1. Obviously with local dimming, if you do a test, it's gonna be significantly lower than that, but realistically, you're never gonna hit that. You're gonna be hitting 1000 to 1 in 99% of the time. So that's the realistic rating. As for backlight bleed, there was none, so that's great. However, there was a different issue. And that issue was the screen here seems to be set further back behind the physical front of the panel. And I say seems because it looks like an optical illusion. Now the problem this causes is on pure white screens, like when you're scrolling through YouTube or you're typing out notes, especially the four corners appear darker, like almost muddy. Kind of what bad brightness uniformity looks like, but only on the corners. However, when I look straight on and kind of move my head over to the edge of the panel, that completely goes away. So that's why I say it's kind of like an optical illusion. Keep in mind, this is with me directly in line with the front of the panel, and while you never really notice it in game, when you are on white screens like scrolling through YouTube or typing out notes, things like that, it does kind of look ugly, especially if you have another IPS panel side by side and you can clearly see that that doesn't have it. It's a lot more noticeable at that point. So with a dual monitor setup, get two of these. I don't want to make it seem like it's a huge issue. It's not, but it's just something to be noted. Again, if you're using this primarily for a gaming monitor, or that's not going to bug you, you'd never really notice it unless it's on pure white. But again, it is something to note, and it's a little weird. I did ask this in the unboxing, but if you guys know why that is, comment that below, and I would really like to learn that. Now, the second issue I came across was just a bug. Basically, when I was switching from the 4K 180 to the Full HD 360 mode, as soon as I switched, the monitor just like stopped responding, essentially. It still displayed the image that was now full HD, but the resolution graphic from the OSD just kind of stuck on the screen and it wasn't responding. Okay, so I'm filming this on my phone. This is up. I just switched to the 1080p 360. Cannot use the power button and cannot use the joystick. It does nothing right now. So I'm just gonna unplug it and see if that fixes it. All right, now let's talk response time and ghosting. Response time here is great, as you would expect. Although the tuning could be a tad better, it's still really good. First, in the 1080p 360 mode, the slowest response time setting is fast. This still causes a very slight amount of overshoot or inverse ghosting, and this gets worse obviously when you go into super fast and then extreme. So just leave this in fast. Now, in the 4K 180Hz mode, ghosting is the best here. And again, keep it in that fast mode because super fast and extreme will cause overshoot. But when it's in fast here, ghosting is extremely low. Like visually, you'd probably not be able to tell the difference between this and an OLED if you're doing like a blind side-by-side gaming test. It's that good. It is basically crystal clear. Also, one note with that is that I saw no difference with ghosting between Dolby Vision and HDR in both modes, so it's pretty uniform across the board. Standard build quality here is classic Dell Alienware stuff. It looks really nice, it's got good cable management, great adjustability with height, tilt, swivel, and full rotation both to the left and the right. This also has a pop-out headphone stand, though I think it's pretty gimmicky and I never use it, it is included. For the menu system and controls, again, classic Dell Alienware. It's functional with no real learning curve using the joystick and a dedicated on and off button, which I love, but the graphics also aren't super special and I think they should be updated. However, obviously this isn't a deal breaker, it's very functional. For Vesa compatibility, it's compatible with 100mm by 100mm Vesa mounts. Now to the most important section of the video, price and value. This is $599.99 on Dell's website. Again, links below if you want to check it out, but the question is, should you buy it? Well, the monitor overall doesn't have any major issues and it does everything an IPS gaming monitor should do, but honestly better than most. The brightness is phenomenal, colors are great, and 4K at 180 gives you a nice bump even at that full resolution when compared to your normal 144 Hz. But the real question is, are you going to use and find value in the ability to switch between high resolution gaming and high refresh rate gaming for more competitive games? If that answer is yes, then I definitely recommend this. Again, if you want to check it out, there are Dell.com links below. If there are Amazon links, we will also update those at the time that they go on Amazon. But this is Type-C Tech Reviews, and I'll see you guys in the next video.